Hello and welcome to Different Perspectives. I'm Paul Ignatius in Washington. The smoke is still clearing over northern Nigeria after US strikes are carried out on Christmas Day. President Donald Trump is claiming perfect strikes, saying they were meant to avenge the killing of Christians. But Nigerian government is striking a careful tone, describing the operation as a standard counterterrorism operation. Without the United States, with the United States. So there is the question. Is this the start of a sustained US campaign in West Africa, or is it a domestic political message delivered overseas with a cruise missile? Well, joining me is my great friend, Dr. Edgar Githua, a security and diplomatic expert at Strathmore University in Nairobi, Kenya. He will help to unpack the fallout of what many are calling the Christmas bombs. Mr. Githua, welcome to Different Perspectives.
Thank you, Paul, for having me. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
It's always good to see you, and happy holidays to you. How was your Christmas?
Christmas was good, quiet, laid back, but we are happy and looking forward to the new year, and hopefully hoping for a great year ahead. Thank you.
So let's start off with at least maybe getting some deep analysis of what's going on. Reports suggest that the strike hit this new group we've never heard of, but it's part of ISIS. How is this group different from the groups that we've known that have harassed people, killed a lot of people, like Boko Haram or ISWAP, and why does this matter?
Thank you, Paul, for having me. Number one, we begin by saying that the Sahel region, West Africa, and the Sahel belt have had or have suffered a proliferation of, these terrorist groups, dissident groups, and largely because of the security vacuum that has arisen because of the weak governance and the weak governments in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Chad, that entire Sahel region, going all the way to Nigeria. So you realize that this new group, Lurakawa or something, I might mispronounce the name, affiliated to ISIS, it is just an offshoot of ISIS. There are many branches of ISIS, the Islamic State. The idea that, actually for me, ISIS actually has been thriving on the idea on an ideology of recreating the caliphate, this grand Islamic caliphate. And hence, anywhere there are huge population of Muslim faithful, and where there is a security kind of vacuum, they try and plant themselves there. Of course, in great rivalry with Al-Qaeda, who are the precursors in that region. So this new group was probably just an offshoot of, is an offshoot of ISIS operating within that greater Sahel region and finding the weak security architecture on the borders of Nigeria, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, to operate ideology of creating the caliphate, and of course gaining physical territory with the hope of one day raising a flag under one big banner, that caliphate, which for me I call an ideology now because it has stopped being religion. It is bigger than religion. It is more of it's an ideology that they are trying to come up with to take over large territories, bring large territories under their control.
But how about when it comes to, for example, the messaging? Washington has characterized it as they're trying to protect Christians. Yes, there's been that those killings targeting Christians in a religiously divided country. does that rhetoric risk worsening this sectarian tension?
Yeah, I thank you, and I like the way you have put it. The idea, the messaging is very direct. The messaging, we call this, and probably in media you might probably have come across this, something called agenda setting. Whenever governments out there, local governments, any government anywhere, constituted anywhere, whenever it wants to embark and execute a particular agenda, they first have to frame. So they have to frame issues in a particular way. They have to be framed in a particular way, and what we call agenda setting. It's part of statecraft, it's part of tradecraft, and especially statecraft. So in this sense, granted it is true, a lot of Christians were dying in this region. There have been, Boko Haram began this some years ago, and somehow the government of Nigeria appeared to have tried to deal with that issue. But then now, increasingly, these attacks have become more imminent and more prominent. And I think that is where, this is what now caught the attention of Washington. The fact that largely, granted, the terrorists are affecting both the Christians and the Muslims within that Sokoto region, within that northern part of Nigeria. But largely, it appears like it is the Christians who are bearing the brunt of those atrocities. Hence, like all politicians, like all great nations, the US decides to use whatever lens it decides to use to interpret. Because rightly speaking, they were right in saying that more Christians are dying than Muslims. And it may not be a religious war, because remember, these terrorists are targeting both the Christians and the moderate Muslims who do not believe in their agenda. So the framing of the issues, the agenda setting, and making it sound like it is a Christian genocide going on, for me and from what I've read, is just part of the optics in justifying why this was done. All right, because someone would really want to understand, why is the US, the greatest nation, the biggest superpower in the world right now, very interested? And their biggest interest can only be brought into play by now bringing this religious divide and the appearance that Christians are suffering more than the Muslims were in the northern part of Nigeria, which, rightly speaking, had been happening for some time. But now Trump and the Republican government administration in power right now, knowing that they are very heavily pro-Christian, remember, they are very religious and they are very pro-Christian, felt it was their time to take matters into their own hands to try and do something about it. Hence the airstrikes, hence the strikes that came in during Christmas. But largely, if you ask me, Christians and Muslims are suffering almost at equal measure at the hands of these ISIS terrorists.
Great point. Just yesterday, somebody put a bomb in a mosque and it killed a lot of people. As far as I can remember, the killings have been happening on both sides. It's not like a one-off shooter thing. I can remember going back even to the 1990s, the 2000s. These killings have been happening. It's only now that some people are wondering why now Washington wanting to exert this kind of pressure. Nigeria says it approved the strikes. From your perspective, do you think this was some real cooperation or pressure from Washington? Because about a month ago, President Trump went on record and said that if Nigeria doesn't put its act together, they are going to come for them. I remember even talking to the spokesperson of the Nigerian president, the person who speaks for the president, about the same subject. He said that at the time, the United States had not consulted with them, and he argued that they were a partner country and they were expecting, if something like that was to happen, that they would sit down and agree to the terms of engagement.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, definitely. Let's put back to what I was saying. Yes, killings have been happening for many years over various regimes. But I choose to look at this a little bit differently. This is the first step of the US being able to extend its global war on terror in the Sahel region and taking back lost ground. Remember, the US and France when all these countries had their uprisings and had these coups that took place in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and the entire region, there has been a push against having Western boots on the ground. So this is the US's back. My analysis is this is America's way, an open door back into the area. Why? Because there is a huge security vacuum that is enabling ISIS, ISWAP, ISSP, Al-Qaeda, and all these groups to regroup and to build a stronghold. So Nigeria is just the open door for me. It is a warning shot that the US has fired to Boko Haram and all these other extremist groups that after we are done with Sokoto and this Nigerian situation, with or without your permission, we are coming for you. So this is a warning shot the US is firing. It's just an extension of the global war on terror. It has fired its warning shot to all these groups. So I expect to see going forward lying low or reducing their activities in the region because they have realized that the US has the capability and ability to reach them at whatever time, given their advanced technological intelligence gathering mechanisms, using their satellites and even, the boots on the ground, they'll be able to easily wipe out a few of these groups which are not very, very strong. So I feel this is the US coming back into this, coming back into the regional security architecture of the Sahel, and Nigeria was the open door. Back to your second point, was the Nigerian government involved? At first, all countries are sovereign. All governments want to claim sovereignty. But the bigger question becomes for the Nigerian government, and I think this is where they were caught between a rock and a hard place, is if you claim you are a sovereign country and you're in full control of your territory, and all, whether Christians, Muslims, whoever they are secure under your rule, why are these atrocities occurring? And I think Nigeria did not have an answer for that. So some people will argue Nigeria was pushed, coerced into this. Ultimately, Nigeria could not say no because they had been given the chance to do something about it and had seemingly failed in getting the job done. So when the US steps in, and remember, under liberalism, international relations under liberalism, the right to life is sacred. The right to any human life is sacred. So the responsibility to protect. Anytime a big country like the US says we are walking in on humanitarian grounds, these preemptive strikes are meant to save human life. Nobody can argue against that because human lives were dying. So I think the Nigerian government got caught between a rock and a hard place. They didn't get their act together on time to be able to contain these killings. And so the US walked in.
How about those people who said that why Nigeria? There's been these ISIS terrorists all over that region, especially in the Sahel region. You have a lot of those guys roaming around killing people from Nigeria to Burkina Faso to Mali, all those places that are currently occupied by quote unquote the coup leaders, right, have had issues with ISIS. But for Nigeria, somehow the US is saying, in terms of effectiveness, they're saying that there were multiple casualties who were killed or who died. The locals are saying there's no evidence yet. How do we verify such information to make sure that these hits were a success? Going back to your point, that it sends a very, very strong message to some of these groups in the region that are roaming around and killing a lot of people.
Thank you. You've asked a very nice question. And I like your question because veracity, how do you verify that they were effective? One of the considerations, I've read a lot about the kill capture mission, the US's hunt for Osama bin Laden. And I've read a number of books that say some of the considerations that were given on why SEAL Team 6 DevGru was sent in as opposed to a Tomahawk missile was because the US wanted to make sure they could get the DNA and confirm they have actually gotten Osama bin Laden. They needed that definitive proof. Now, Tomahawk missiles by nature are weapons that will not allow you to go and verify who and who has been killed. But when they say there were multiple casualties, I believe very easily if this mission, and I believe it was done with the cooperation of the Nigerian government, it means there were some certain elements of US military command structure on the ground who helped to maybe verify, identify the targets. And when those missiles came in and hit those either training camps or mini headquarters or wherever these terrorists were based, I have a feeling they would not be talking so confidently if they were not sure that they were actually at the point of impact that some of these terrorist leaders and their followers and soldiers were killed. So it's very possible that we may never get the proof that we are looking for, and we may never be able to verify that, or the Nigerian government could even seclude and condone off that area, and and make reporters and civilians never really going to find out who died and who did not die. But granted, when the American government says it was effective and the Nigerian government concurs, it would mean that to an extent, maybe that joint operation really did, really did. They got the people who they were looking for. Maybe they had a particular list. I'm just guessing. Maybe they had, and sometimes for some of these organizations, it doesn't even mean wiping out the entire organization, which is not very easy. But wiping out key leaders, the engine, the brains, the philosophers, the power behind the organization, maybe those are the actual targets. And if we say in English, cut the head of the snake. If you cut the head of the snake, the rest of the body, which is intact, remains ineffective. Maybe this was a surgical strike to just remove the key leaders of these groups. So in coming days, I'm sure using news outlets and intelligence leakages, we are going to find out more and more about what happened. But I believe when they said that they were effective, and if these strikes were done in conjunction with the Nigerian government, then I think these were surgical strikes to try, in my view, to remove the leadership of these groups. And probably, I suspect these were successful.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back at the point that you made earlier about selective intervention. I was just thinking about how many mosques have been bombed. When you look at the map of northern Nigeria, or if you have had like the privilege of going to northern Nigeria, that place is predominantly a Muslim. You could argue that it's almost like a different country, northern Nigeria, because there are more Muslims there than there are Christians, right?
Yeah,
now,
correct.
And over the years, this, I guess I should call them systematic killings, have been happening. But why? I think maybe I want you to go back to that point, especially why focus on this Christian narrative? Is it because maybe these Christians are connected to some of the evangelicals here, the one pushing the narrative, or it's something else? Could it be that the United States is, has been on the campaign for looking for critical minerals and maybe oil? Could it be that the United States is intervening because they want some of these things rather than also, and they're using the Christian-focused narrative as a way to get in?
Thank you. That's a very nice question, and I like your speculation. I like the way you're putting it, and trust me, you will get people who will agree with you 100%. I choose to also add to that bandwagon of conspiracy theories something that was written by a philosopher called Samuel P. Huntington. He wrote a book called The Clash of Civilizations. And what some of the things he was arguing, some of the things that were being argued is that in later times, which let's call this the period we're living in, these later times, wars are going to be fought on cultural identity issues. And some of the things he talked about would be the clash between the Christianity and Islam as religions. All right. So in my view, so going back to your narrative, it is not that nobody has realized that, it's not that the world is waking up or the US is waking up and discovering that northern Nigeria is predominantly Muslim. I think my feeling is that previous regimes probably gave Nigeria the benefit of the doubt, gave the successive Nigerian governments the leeway to contain what they felt was an internal issue. Because Boko Haram was mainly within Nigeria, and the Nigerian government was said to be on top of things. Of course, Boko Haram, came into fame when they kidnapped the 200 girls some years back. So
Yeah.
that's when they sprang to notoriety at that time. But I think successive American regimes have probably given Nigeria the leeway to deal with that issue on their own terms, in their own way, and Nigeria appeared to be containing it. It's just that now, with the advent of ISIS and Al-Qaeda spreading so much within the Sahel, the Coup Belt and the Sahel region, going all the way up to Chad, I think the US realized that Africa is going to be the next contested area where these groups are going to get grounding and spring from and cause a lot of issues. And I'm just thinking, going back to your issue about minerals, let's think about it this way. Nigeria is one of the largest producers of oil in Africa, if not the largest. All right. Within OPEC and within the global oil architecture, Nigeria is one of those big producers of oil. If the regime is under threat from pressure coming from ISIS, Al-Qaeda, eventually Boko Haram, they could all morph. The enemy of your enemy is my friend. They could decide to just create a big group that really creates a clear and present danger for Nigeria. Why? Because they want to control oil. And if you allow Nigeria to fall to all these extremist groups, you can imagine, and they have they have oil literally to oil their machinery and their recruitment. So strategic thinking, long-term strategic thinking, you try and nip it at the bud. You try and do what you need to do to stop them from growing and creating and building a presence. That is number one. Number two, this is the conspiracy theorist within me now. Do not be surprised, Paul, that there are also elements within Nigeria who would be happy to see the country fall to these extremist groups for their own selfish reasons. Exactly, for their own selfish reasons. So the US sending in Tomahawk missiles and putting a stop to this is also telling those hidden conspiratory people who could be hiding within a Nigerian government or within a Nigerian population that we will not allow Nigeria to fall and go down this road. We will not allow Nigeria to become the next Libya. We will not allow Nigeria to be taken over by groups that are going to destabilize global peace. So there are all these ways of thinking about it, Paul. And like I said, this is the US's open door, back into the Sahel. Who knows? Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger could now reach out to the US and tell them, how you help Nigeria deal with the problem? We are also inviting you. This could get the Americans invited back into Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso to help them fight their own battles, because Jenin is also giving Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger a hard time. Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, just up there in Libya, these are groups that are really destabilizing the entire region. So this, in my view, is a way of America advertising its ability and willingness to step in to help any of these governments, if they're willing to cooperate with the US, to come and deal with the security issue in this global war on terror. So from me, I'm analyzing it from various angles. It is a way of the US getting back into the region. It is a way of preventing Nigeria from falling and going down into these terrorist hands. And it's just a way of trying to, stop the spread of these groups from the region.
If you are just joining us, we are streaming live across all social media platforms. And our topic today is US missiles hit Sokoto as Trump vows a protection for Christians. We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts and comments in the comment section below and tell us what you think about the US strikes in Nigeria. My guest is Dr. Edgar Githua, a security and diplomatic expert at Strathmore University, based in Nairobi, Kenya. And in case you don't know anything about Dr. Githua, he's one of the best, perhaps the best security analyst that is on the continent. So check him out, check his work. He's a great analyst. Going back to the point that we also talked about, the military escalation, Edgar, I like this term Tomahawk missiles, right? Why not use the drones? Everybody is now used to these drones, how these drones can fish you out of the hole, you know? Why use these very powerful missiles when they have this advanced technology that can literally, you know, like track these people wherever they are, and, you know, like targeted assassinations? They've done that before. Why use these very powerful missiles?
I think, thanks for your question. And I think from a military strategic perspective, it is to send a message. You want to send a big and very loud message that here are our cruise missiles. You can imagine being launched all the way from the Atlantic, and they can come and literally get to where you are. So I think it is the fear factor, the scare factor, the wow factor, to just, come large and in charge and tell them, here we are and we can get you. Of course, the Tomahawk missile, the biggest disadvantage of it, I'm not a military man, but I research a lot about these weapons, is the fear of collateral damage. The surgical strike that you're talking about, the beauty about the drone strike is probably less collateral damage. But I am sure if the Nigerian government was involved in this, probably they did this knowing that there would be very minimal collateral damage and they would be able to get the people that were looking for. So it was a statement to the region. It was a statement to Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, to ISSP, to ISIS in the Western State province. It was a message to all these groups: we are coming, we are watching, and we can come. And like I said, it was also an advertisement to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, who are struggling, and Chad, who have been struggling with their own issues on their own soil, that we are ready and willing to help. Remember, Paul, the Wagner Group from Russia has also promised aid, military aid and help in dealing with these groups, but with very mixed results. So everybody knows the Wagner Group has been around there. Now they renamed themselves, they call the African Corps. They've been in that region, but what do they have to show for all the time they've been on the ground? We've not heard of losses on the side of the terrorists. We've not heard what they've done. And probably they've been successful, but maybe not well documented. But when a Tomahawk missile lands, everybody takes notice. Everybody knows something has happened. So it is going large. It is large and in charge. Be loud. Send your message clearly to everybody. We are here. We can make the difference. And just that wow factor. The Americans have done it. And I've been looking at some of the comments from Nigerians. Of course, it's a mixed bag, but a good majority are happy that finally something has been done about it. So to an extent, you could say the global optics for the US, it has scored big in terms of global optics on its global war on terror, trying to show that we are large and we are in charge and we can stand up to be counted when you really need us.
Mm-hmm. To your point, there's been a lot of talk about that Russian group, formerly the Wagner Group. Now, is it Africa Corps, right?
Africa Corps, yes.
Yes, they are on the ground. They are in the region. All these countries that have been undergoing sort of a political change have run out to Russia to seek help. But like you said, we have not seen much on the ground. A couple years ago, maybe about 3 years ago, United States had one of the biggest bases in Niger. But with the regime change in Niger, they were forced out. So is France. These people in the Sahel, in the Maghreb, in that entire corridor are struggling with these terrorists who have caused havoc. They're constantly killing people. They're constantly harassing people for money because they have to sustain their movements, right?
Yeah.
So the question is now, looking at it from that regional strategy, does this signal a shift towards the overall horizon that the United States can strike, even in some of those countries where they've said United States is not welcome, especially in the Sahel region?
Yeah, thanks. That's a very good question. Ideally, and I use the word ideally, all military strikes against these groups should be done with the cooperation of the host government. But then remember, we're in a gray area here, Paul. These governments in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso do not have legitimacy. They came into power through the back door. Granted, their citizens have allowed them and they are ruling their countries and they're in charge of their countries, but they still lack legitimacy. Remember, they pulled out of the African Union, pulled out of ECOWAS, ECOMOG, and now, if they are unable to take care of the security of the very same people who they claimed they are overthrowing previous regimes to come and take, if they are unable to provide security for the people whom they are supposed to provide security for, and these are human lives, and remember, all lives matter, who is expected to protect those people? So there is a very gray area that could be exploited. I know legal scholars out there are going to fight me on this, but trust me, I will not be surprised if I see more airstrikes in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, on these terrorist camps where these governments have been unable to contain them. And trust me, I can assure you almost 100%, you will not hear any complaints from these coup leaders. Traore and the other colonel and the other general are not going to complain when one or two few Scud missiles or not a Scud, I mean another Tomahawk missile or other missiles or predator drones come and help you with the security. Largely because the big picture is all lives matter. Regardless of the government in power, these governments remember legitimacy. They came into power through coups, and that does not mean I am delegitimizing them at all. But the bigger question now becomes, are they being able to provide security for their people? Because the world cannot watch when human lives are getting lost because of illegitimate governments that came into power and are unable to provide security. So do not be surprised if the US turns the US Africa Command. If US AFRICOM decides, let's just clear all these people from the Sahel belt, from the coup belt, that Sahel region up to Chad, and easily consults and tells them, and they don't even have to be in agreement. They'll simply tell them, we have noticed these terrorist camps in your soil. You have not done anything about it. We are striking them. And they go ahead and do it. You will not have any complaints from Traore and company. They will not complain. Granted, ideally, all these strikes should be done in collaboration with the host government so that there is that element of sovereignty and acceptance and, of course, joint operations. But I will not be surprised if, for example, the US realizes through its intelligence network these governments are unable. Two words here, either unwilling or unable. It is one thing for them to be unable because they don't have the capacity and the material power to do it. But they could be also, if they are unwilling, meaning they could do something but they are unwilling for whatever reason, I am sure the US will step in because regardless, even though those are predominantly Muslim countries, those are still human lives. And I think all lives matter. So I will not be surprised.
Ideally, do you think that no matter what kind of pressure that they assert or exert on these groups, do you think that it's possible to root them out? Because we are talking of an ideology here. We are not talking of like a political party or people in opposition, people who show up and they campaign on this platform and try to, sell their ideas. No. We are talking about people who, in a way, have these radical ideas, who are radicalized by, they use religion as a pretext. Hold on, sorry about that.
Sorry.
Yeah, so they use religion to do harm, and so when you go in northern Nigeria, I've been fortunate enough to go in my degree in Kaduna, in some of those Bauni states, some of those places, there are a lot more Muslims who don't even want, like women, for example, to go to school. It's an idea. Yeah. Can they get rid of that idea?
Yeah, thanks. And I think you've now mentioned For countries like Nigeria and to an extent Tanzania, countries that have huge Muslim populations living side by side with Christian populations, I think they run into now what I was telling you, that clash of civilizations. Because you'll find Nigeria, the southern part of Nigeria, very developed, very open-minded, very liberal. Then we go to the conservative north, the Fulanis, all those Maiduguri, the Sokoto area you've mentioned, very heavily Islam, and there is nothing wrong with their religion, but it is this ideology. Now, shifting to radicalization, there are many things that make such regions susceptible to radicalization. We're talking about poverty, high unemployment, bad education, and all those things. So it is a social economic issue. Bombs alone will not solve the problem, Paul, in my perspective and from my research. Bombs alone are not the way to go. Boots on the ground will, to an extent, push back these jihadists, will push back these extremists. But you have got to replace that ideology, that hope that they come and give these vulnerable populations. You have to replace the hope they give by empowering these populations, allowing, like you rightly mentioned, allowing the women and girls in these areas to go to school, get empowered, allowing the youth to be employed, improving. So what the Nigerian government should be doing to help itself fight this battle is ensuring that development and socioeconomic empowerment get to the northern parts of Nigeria. This one now denies these groups from getting populations from which to recruit, because they recruit. I am sure it's not just free of charge. Probably there's a monthly stipend, there's a small salary, an allowance. If you join our group, your family is taken care of. So some people join these groups because they want to take care of their families. So social economic empowerment, and it's a long-term strategy. So boots on the ground, using military power to fight terrorism is just one way of doing it. The de-radicalization, fighting radicalization is more of soft power. It's more of now empowering the communities, education, raising awareness, and making them be able, empowering the populations to be able to say no on their on their own behalf, telling these people when they come around recruiting, we do not buy your ideology. This is not what Islam teaches. Because if you talk to the average Muslim, they'll tell you these people practice another brand of Islam. It's not what the other normal liberal Muslims practice. So this is just someone who is weaponizing religion. These are groups that are weaponizing religion for their own selfish gain because of the minerals they want to control. If you look at the entire region where this Boko Haram, Jinim, Al-Qaeda in Maghreb, all these groups have come up. These are regions that are rich in minerals, which tells you it is not just about ideology, it's not just about religion. There's also the desire to control this mineral wealth. And so just empower your populations to be able to say no. And then you're going to deny and starve these groups of members from whom you can recruit and all that. That's just my view about it, Paul.
I know you have to run very briefly. Do you, going forward, the US says more is coming, according to the Secretary of War or former or the Defense Secretary here says more is coming. Do you think the United States can sustain this kind of campaign, and Nigeria will seize that ground and maybe chase those guys out of that region?
I think it is possible, because in Nigeria, for me, it's very easy. And I don't know whether these are the calculations the Americans have done. Number one, first suppress the group by sheer volume of power and firepower. Disorgan, break up their camps, destroy their equipment, scare them back into the holes which they crawled out from. And then now, the second phase, empower the Nigerian military. So have probably a US-Nigerian joint mission where Americans train Nigerians on counterterrorism, better counterterrorism, give them some military aid package to be able, so that the Nigerians now pick up the fight themselves. The Nigerian military goes and really now that they have the momentum on their side, now that they have the advantage on their side, to be able to push back these jihadists. So it is possible. I think in the short term, boots on the ground, maybe not, I'm not saying the Americans agreeing to come on the ground, but they could send a few contractors, some people to train the Nigerian military on how best to conduct counterterrorism operations, and then give them military aid, buy them military equipment, and support them through AFRICOM, and probably Nigeria will be able to clean up its borders. For Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso now thinking outside the borders. The US will have to think about how to cooperate with this entire region. And so unless it gets the cooperation it needs from this Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, they may be reduced to what they do probably in Somalia. Every once in a while, drone attacks using the predator drone come and attack a few camps there, disorganized, but probably never have the full success it would get if it, for example, got this, the support of the governments in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger.
Well, Edgar, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure, Paul. Thank you so much.
Dr. Edgar Githua is a security and diplomatic expert at Strathmore University in Nairobi, Kenya, and he's one of the best security analysts in the region. And of course, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to me, Paul Ndiho, on Substack, X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Spotify. We'll see you on another edition or episode of Different Perspectives. For now, so long from Washington. Edgar, stick around for a minute. Thank you so much.
Thank you.